Price of Divinity by Harbison. No name. Names were distinguished one from another. Now there was only one. Only him. The vastness of space seemed to swallow him up. From his asteroid perch, he could spot a few other bodies. No planets. Not anymore, at least. He cast a mournful eye toward the center. Nothing showed in the visible spectrum, but he could see the palpitations in gravity. The hole was there, just where he had left it eons ago. He had remembered when the abilities first manifested. There was no explanation. One day he was ordinary, the next, extraordinary. First there were accusations of steroids. Then he did things that no steroid or any drug known to man could do. Flying, redistribution of mass and energy. The scientists called him the closest thing to God. The religious people didn't like that. He drifted coolly toward the heart of the system, letting the natural gravity well do its work. Rather, artificial. It was man-made after all, even if it was made by the last man. Wars had broken out, but all he had wanted was to be left alone. His country had convinced him to fight on their side. The horrors he committed still flashed in his memory. Flesh melted from bone, bodies incinerated in an instant. Before that, he had no idea what he could do. With a twitch of his fingers, he atomized an incoming asteroid. Had it impacted before the Earth disappeared, it would have caused an extinction event to rival the dinosaurs. Maybe that would have been cleaner, he contemplated. His first act of rebellion had been minuscule. His military handlers had given him a target, a small town thought to be harboring enemy operatives. He refused. They got angry, and he vaporized them. The black hole neared with increasing speed. He calmly compared it to floating along the rivers and creeks of his youth. Instead of water, it was gravity now. From that altercation, it escalated. Ground troops were called in and quickly dispatched. Armor tried to stop him, but they were no match. Airstrikes demolished his house, but he was unscathed. Finally, the High Command authorized a nuclear strike, which only served to kill everyone he'd ever cared about. That was the final straw. He came to a stop. He could see the gravity ripple before him, pouring over the event horizon. He had the power to stop himself here, but once the event horizon was crossed, there was no going back. As the radioactive dust had cleared from the nuclear strike, he rose into the sky. He kept rising, through the atmosphere and into space. He had pointed himself toward the sun, and minutes later, he was in the heart of the star. From there, it was a simple thing to overwhelm the core and collapse the star into a black hole. He had watched from afar as the inner solar system was sucked in, the Earth's demise barely registering on his emotionless face. That was ages ago. He could not remember the time that had passed since. He had thought and rethought his actions. It took millennia, but he had found remorse. Condemning a whole planet to death for the actions of a few, he was no better than the men who had condemned the town. He looked again at the event horizon. One step, and it would soon be over. The black singularity would pull him in and crush his atoms into oblivion. He had survived countless hardships, much more than the human body was meant to endure. He contemplated a moment, and then took the step. Aliens by Suzanne Borcher. I am programmed to destroy the invader's outpost by pushing a hidden button on my exoscreen that is surrounded by artificial hair. While probing the captured alien's centralized core, my masters discovered the invaders seemed to trust a particular creature. I was reprogrammed into that image. I'm repulsed by my disguise. I must continually readjust that rejection. I cannot permit myself to think about anything except pushing the button. But first, I must infiltrate their defensive sentries. I must approach them filled with revulsion, but pretend friendliness. I cower and lower myself to the ground to scrape my belly as I crawl toward the sentry on the left. I'm programmed to wave a tail and to whimper. I want to fight the programming, but continue to imitate the alien creature. "Hey, look at the dog," he says to his partner. "Hey there, fella, don't be afraid." His hand reaches toward my face, and I do not bite him as he rubs behind my synthetic ears. Wait, why does that feel good? "Watch it, Roy," his partner says. "He might bite," but I force my gaze to shift to the partner and whine. "What's he doing here?" I don't like the partner. He could ruin the plan. "Jeff had a dog stowed away on the ship. Maybe when he was taken, the dog also escaped." Roy's fingers continue to rub my neck and back. I reach up to his hands for more. He's probably hungry and thirsty. The partner approaches me and I stifle a growl. A growl? I push against Roy. I feel myself lifted up and cuddled against his chest. Cuddled? Hey, in a couple of digits when Ivan and John relieve us, I'm going to take him inside. I'll explain it to the captain and maybe we can all share him. Maybe he can help us somehow with these recalcitrant aliens. Roy hesitates, then says, maybe he can bring us a bit of home. I pant and smile. Smile. Roy's warmth feels good. I search my programming and cannot find out why. And then I'm carried inside. I am surrounded by warmth and soft words. I rest beside Roy. And now I cannot permit myself to think about anything except that button. I continually search my programming for a way to dismantle it. His fingers are too close to its hiding place. Homecoming by Glen, Leung. We decided to go in on foot, so we left Yes Sir Dave guarding the rover with orders to keep the engines warm. The regiment of monoliths stood at attention as we walked toward them, piercing the alien sky like blunt yet deadly spears. Streaks of blue, purple, and green flora draped their pensive bodies. The planet star peeked over one of the colossal tombstones as if trying to wake this dead city. It was hard to believe all of these were natural. I sometimes think about what Earth would look like if everyone just got up and left, and this view always comes up. As we move farther from the low hum of the rover's engines, the strange foliage seemed to sink into us and an uneasy quiet settled. It was much like the way snow absorbed the sound to give a sense of foreboding. I had returned home after watching my classmates partake in the largest snowball fight ever. My mother was on the ground, the tall chair on its side, and pieces of a broken light bulb strewn across the red ooze. We moved to the city after that, and I discarded my memories to make rooms for new ones. The sound of nature gave way to the sound of traffic. We came across a near rectangular protrusion, and I was asked to examine it and take some samples. I brushed the red vines aside, half expecting to see my grandfather's name. My father had felt that the only thing he needed to do was spend a month's salary on a sarcophagus. The visiting was then left to me. After a while, it had probably become something like this. I cannot say I was surprised when I found that it was hard soil instead of marble. This was good. I didn't have to work too hard to chip it away. Suddenly, Hysteria Ben let out a scream and pointed at the sky behind us. The team turned around to see the red glow of the setting star and the peaceful drift of odd-looking clouds. It was like a huge shadow, like a tentacle. It swung across the sky and then vanished. As if on cue, other members of the team started reporting their own sightings. None were as grand as Ben's, falling mostly on the creepy side. Our commander's reprimand got swallowed abruptly, so we knew it was time to head back. We returned to a confused Dave, who checked his watch as he saw us emerge from the shadows. It was my turn to drive, so I started the engines and turned the rover back toward the base. That night, we were examined, and no evidence of hallucinogens were found. Dave, however, came down with my nausea and had to be monitored. We were told to watch ourselves and each other for symptoms. I didn't want my teammates making their assumptions. So, I took to my place in the viewing room. I watched the brightness of a billion stars light up across the distant monoliths. They were calling. They were calming. Sometimes We Wake Up Alone by Stephen Odhner. I can't stop staring at the massive crater, watching the clouds of dust that blow out past its rim before curling down back into the bowl and dissipating. For the 100th time, I wonder why the crater hasn't filled up with water. Maybe it just doesn't rain anymore. I always forget to ask. A lack of rain would explain the dust that tints the sky red, that covers the ruins of the city and transforms them from twisted buildings into indistinct burial mounds. I had decided that some virus or pollutant that had killed the plants and in turn had allowed the soil to blow freely. Maybe it was just a simple lack of rain. The robot glides noiselessly through the doorway with my lunch. Greetings, I have the meal you requested. They always sound so excited. I take the tray and place it on the table by the window. The spindly metal creature does the equivalent of standing at attention as it asks the same thing as always. Is there any other service I can provide? I tell it I have some questions and it waits eagerly. I've already tried asking about the crater, asking for the location of any other humans, asking to travel. I try asking about the rain this time. I'm sorry, weather information is currently not available. Of course not. It's always the same answer with the automated systems trying to access networks that no longer exist. I allow the robot to leave and go back to staring out the window. The landscape is hard to read with the buildings knocked over and covered in dust. But the more I think about it, the more I'm sure my old apartment should be in the crater, if it even still existed by the time whatever it was happened. I leave the bland recycled food and wander downstairs. past floor after floor of empty offices and idle robots. I stop on the ground level for a moment to once again look at the electronic notice on the main doors. Until further notice, the government has implemented a mandatory lockdown for public safety reasons. Before heading to the basement where the hum of the building's independent power plant vibrates up to the soles of my shoes. Once more, I pace down the long hallway with the countless cryogenic chambers, the time capsules filled with what could be the only other humans on Earth. I want to smash all of the electronics so the robots are forced to revive everyone, but I know most of them were frozen when they were already dead or about to be. I asked if others had been healthy or had a set specific date for decanting like myself, but the robot excitedly informed me that it couldn't give out privileged client information. If I forced the robots to open them all up, thaw them all out, wouldn't it be worth it if only one person survived? I know I won't do it. I can't stand the thought of killing any of them, even though they know that they'll never wake up, that someday the power will fail, and they will seamlessly transition from sleep to death. Some of it is selfish too. I'm not sure how many people the robots can provide for. Better to play it safe, lonely though I am. Heading back to the stairs, I take one last look down the endless vault of frozen humanity. Maybe tomorrow. For now, I head back upstairs to watch the sun set over the crater.